G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. As you can probably see, I'm down here at Barangaroo today, just under the magnificence of the Crown Casino building. You can see it there spiralling into that cloudy sky. That building has only just been completed, and it's considered to be one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. It just never ceases to amaze me how Australia, a small country of around 25 million people with a relatively new history, has been able to basically take this country, take this land from being a primitive bushland and turning it into one of the most beautiful cities, one of the most productive economies in the world. And who knows where we go from here, but the amount of development that is happening around Sydney town at the moment is phenomenal, with infrastructure such as the metro station and lots of office and residential and hotel buildings being developed. It is definitely going to be a country with a bright future. So we thank our elders past and present. We thank our Indigenous people, and we also thank our migrants, the wave after wave of migrant who came from virtually every other country in the world to make Australia their home and to turn this place, this vast land, this wasteland, into a productive and engaging world economy. Anyway, on that note, what I'd like to do today is to take you through a book summary, a really interesting book summary by a great author. And the author on this book summary is Brene Brown, a very famous author who has a great following. So I expect to get quite a few likes and views on this vlog. So anybody wishing to follow this vlog, you can catch it on my YouTube channel, Jim's 5am Club, and it will be number 1417. And the book is entitled Dare to Lead. And for those who know Brene Brown and her style, she's a authentic sort of author, and she talks a lot about the power of vulnerability and courage, and how we can leverage, embrace, and make the most of our authenticity as people, and not to live with a mask, not to live in shame, and not to live worrying about what other people think of us, because at the end of the day, each and every one of us are unique. Each and every one of us are a contributor in some way, shape or form to the world, to the community, to the families, to the workplaces, and to this country, this nation, this wonderful nation. And Brene says that the courage to be vulnerable, so you need to be courageous to be authentic. The courage to be vulnerable is not about winning or losing. It's about the courage to show up when you can't predict or control the outcome. None of us know what today is going to bring for us and to us. Each day is a mystery. Each day is a gamble. But we do have a few things that we can do in each and every day to make it as predictable as possible. Our morning routines, our environment, our comforting environment, our work, our family, our friends. For some it's social media, but we can have a predictable sort of morning based on the routines, the daily routines and rituals that we engage in. Some people go on runs in the morning, some people go to the gym, some people have a shower and shave, have a breakfast, a comforting breakfast, you name it. But you can start your day in a way which is predictable and comforting. Some people meditate, others pray, others read, others catch the bus, others drive, others catch the ferry. But each person can adapt and adopt a number of rituals to enable their days to be at least predictable for the first half an hour or hour. And then you let yourself loose and avail yourself to the waves. But I remember years ago, an important and wonderful metaphor that I picked up is the one of the surfer. And it's not always a perfect day when you go surfing, but depending on the weather forecast, on the prevailing conditions, you can sort of predict to a certain extent where the waves or where the best waves are going to be based on the geography and the prevailing weather conditions. And simply you can either wait for those sets to come in, you can paddle out to the point where you know that those sets are going to come in, or if it's a terrible day in the water, the surf is flat, then you can choose to do something else. But you need to make the most of those sets when they present themselves and surf the opportunities and make the most of the resources that happen to be at that particular place and time. And similarly in our lives, we are invited, we are called to make the most of what we've got and to surf every single day, looking for the right wave, looking for the right set, looking for the right conditions, and doing whatever we can to make the most of it. So Brene also talks about the fact that sometimes the exact opposite behaviour than what we think of will yield the best outcome in leadership. Sometimes we need to be counterintuitive and not go with the flow, but to try and shape the outcome. And that sometimes, as the author says, sometimes it requires us to be the exact opposite of what we thought would be the right way of behaving. So the first formal point that comes from this book is that the author says that you can never be courageous without being vulnerable. As I say, Brene is the queen of knowledge when it comes to vulnerability and courage. And she makes a very important point here, a very profound point, that in order to be courageous, you need to open yourself up to risk. You need to open yourself up to vulnerability. And she says that acts of courage are usually always accompanied with the feeling of vulnerability, that feeling, that uncomfortable feeling of taking on risk and worrying in terms of whether or not it's going to work out and what people are going to think about you, say about you, and whether or not you're going to be ostracized or isolated. But vulnerability is a universal emotion that we feel. Now, there's no doubt about it that when you put yourself out there, when you create a risk and an opportunity, that there is a feeling that goes with it, And that feeling is something that we need to be a lot more comfortable with. And as a lot of authors say, that we need to live just leaning a little bit outside of our comfort zones, which means that we need to be feeling vulnerable all the time in order to grow and develop and become a better version of ourselves. And we feel this emotion of vulnerability whenever we experience times of risk and uncertainty, and we are at the mercy of other people's actions and considerations. But we need to act in spite of fear is the key message, the key calling that comes from Brene in this book. Because there will be times where the future will be uncertain. There will be times when we're facing potential danger. But we also need to know that we need to face those dangers and we need to face those uncertainties in order to move forward and to benefit, and not only for us to benefit, but for others around us to also benefit as well. So there is a call to action from Brene to basically embrace fear, uncertainty and doubt, and to know that we're going to be surrounded by people who just love creating senses of fear, uncertainty and doubt. You know, there are people who just can't help themselves but be negative. There are people who can't help themselves but remind us of the potential fears, risks and dangers that we face. But unless we step forward, step up and move in the direction of that fear that's facing us, then we're not going to achieve very much in this moment, in this day and in our lifetime. So the author then moves on to talking about values. And the author says that we need to have strong values if we are going to be fearless. And some good advice here from Brene. We need to focus on two of our core values to be able to endure any adversity. So whilst we may have many values, the author here, Brene Brown, says that you don't have to focus on all your values at any one point in time, but to focus on just two core values to endure any adversity. It is absolutely critical to have clarity about what your values are, and you can't live your life living other people's values. We've got to make that clear. We've got to have our own value set that you respect and others understand, and those values need to be absolutely clear to you, and you need to understand them and to live by them is the key message that Brene puts forward in this book. And there are many values that we can consider, and values are human ideals we hold most important in our lives. The ancient Greeks, with their philosophers, with their religious practices, with their experiences that they gained from others, that they gained from themselves and were able to pass on, came up with a number of human ideals and values that shaped the world and also shape the world that we live in today, both the ancient world and the modern world. And there are a number of different values that we can consider and incorporate into our value set. Values such as courage, freedom, justice, kindness, discipline, family, honesty, And the list goes on. You may have some other values which are near and dear to your heart, and the things that define who you are as a person, who you are as a culture, who you are as an employee, and who you are as a family member. So if you know your values, you're in a much better place to deal with adversity, is the key message from Brene. So have values, have strong values, and stick to these values is an important recipe for success. It is important to only focus on 2 values at a time to turn to. And we need to make them a priority in our focus, such as you need to be honest and you need to have self-control, or 2 other binary values that you bring together that define you in a particular moment and a particular place in time. So the last point that Brene brings out in this wonderful book is where she talks about the importance of trust, and that trust is the key to all meaningful relationships that we have in our lives. And to create trust in all of your relationships, we need to remember the acronym BRAVING. So let's go through this acronym, this mnemonic, and see how it can help us remember and to shape our ability to be trustworthy and to generate trust amongst those that we love and cherish. So the B in braving stands for boundary. So to create trust, you need to basically set boundaries, and we need to respect each other's limits and to collaborate within those limits, within those boundaries, leveraging those boundaries and not crossing those boundaries. The R in braving stands for reliability. We need to be reliable in order to be trustworthy. You need to be consistent in your actions. You need to be the person who people can rely on. When you say you're going to do something, you need to be able to keep that promise to others and to yourself. The most important promises that we will ever make in our lives are the promises we make to ourselves. And if we can't hold the promises we make to ourselves, then we are not going to be ever able to hold the promises that we make to others. Let me just move away because it's just about to start raining. So I'll just seek some cover and continue the vlog. It's going to be one of those days here in Sydney. It's going to be wet and miserable, but let me just find some cover over here. And as you can see here, the rain is starting to pelt down. So just let me stand over here and get out of the way and finish off the vlog and finish off the mnemonic of braving. So there we go, we're out of the rain, and as you can see, it's pelting down. So the A in braving stands for accountability. We need to be accountable, and we need to make sure that we're not sweeping our mistakes under the carpet. We're not ignoring the things, our weaknesses, other people's weaknesses, and we shouldn't be sweeping things out under the carpet. And we need to be accountable, according to Brene. The V in braving is very, very interesting. I've never come across this before, but it is an important point. where Brene says we need to be vault closing. Vault closing means that we need to not breach people's confidentiality. If people are sharing, if our friends, our work peers, our parents, our cousins, people in our community are sharing things with us, things which make them feel vulnerable or things that are threatening to them, we need to respect and that act of trust that they're investing in us. And according to the author here, we need to close the vault. In other words, close our mouth and don't share things which are sensitive with other people, so that we don't breach our families, our friends, our work peers' confidentiality. The I in braving stands for integrity. We need to live, breathe, and express integrity with everything we do. Even when people are not watching, you need to do the right thing, and that right thing is the right thing for you. We need to serve God. We need to glorify God. We need to serve each other, our family, more importantly than serving ourselves. So live a life of integrity is a key message coming from Brene. The N in braving, the second last letter of this acronym, stands for being non-judgmental. This is the core element, the core message that comes from the Christian faith. We need to be curious, but we don't have or shouldn't be judgmental of others. And through this curiosity, we need to turn isolation into connection wherever possible. As we've heard time and time again, each person when they're born, God gives them a number of bricks, and you can use those bricks in any way, shape or form you feel that you need to. Some people use those bricks to build brick walls and to isolate themselves. Others use those bricks to use as missiles to throw at each other and to attack each other. And others use those bricks to build walls, to build bridges, to connect one another, to facilitate collaboration, cooperation, working together, joining ideas and creating value through relationships. So think clearly about how you can become less isolated and to become less judgmental. And the last letter in this acronym of braving is the G. We need to be generous. I can't harp on this more, that in life we are given our gifts, we are given opportunities to make money, to build networks, to do lots of things in our lives. But all of those things are granted to us by God, not for our own self-satisfaction, not for being, self-focused, but it's all about sharing the goodness with those around us, with our families, with our friends, with our work peers, with those less fortunate. We make networks, we make friends to share those friends and connect those friends with others. We make money not to spend it on our own selfish needs, but to share it with others in a generous way to make their lives more productive and give them an opening and show them the road. So we need to make room for our expectations and our interpretations of life, but most importantly, as the author says, to consider being generous and to act generous with everything we do, to share our knowledge, to live, learn and pass it on, and to try and make not only our lives better, more consistent and more predictable, but to try and help others feel that predictability and feel that certainty about their lives by comforting them in their hour of need, making their lives a little bit better step by step, and not judging them and not causing them grief. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I look forward to coming to you again from another place with another message of empowerment, where we can take OPE, other people's experiences, and share them, add them to our inventory of skills, and leverage them, embrace them, and make them work not only for us, but for those around us. Anyway, take care everybody. Have a wonderful Friday. It's the Friday before the grand final. It's the Friday before the long weekend. I've got tickets to the grand final. I'm a long-suffering Eels supporter, and it's been 36 years since the Eels in 1986, and I was at that grand final. Won the premiership, where we beat the Bulldogs 4-2 in that epic final at the Sydney Cricket Ground. I remember going there with my Kubaro George Soteropoulos and his brother Vlasi Soteropoulos, and it was a very memorable occasion. I've been to 2 grand finals since. One with Newcastle, where we lost, and one with the Melbourne Storm, which once again we lost. But who knows? We are the underdogs, no doubt, on Sunday. But anything is possible, and I've got my fingers crossed, and I hope that my daughters and granddaughter get to at least experience a grand final where we can have a bit of a laugh. Take care everybody, yassas, and bye for now. Cheers.